Hello, and thank you for having me. So I'm Colleen Lewis. I'm a faculty in computer science at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and I'm excited to get to join Breakthrough Tech to share some resources for impactful BPC plans. And BPC stands for Broadening Participation in Computing Plans. So first I want to draw your attention to two pieces that can be kind of confusing. So the NSF, for some NSF submissions, requires a BPC plan, and we'll call that a project plan in here. So it's required for some submissions. That submission would include a 1 to 3 page proposal describing what the proposal team for that NSF grant would do. Every PI is going to have a responsibility, and that can link to a departmental BPC plan. Okay, so these departmental BPC plans are completely separate. They are a separate document, and they're helpful for coordinating a departmental BPC effort, thinking about getting all your ducks in a row. These are just going to be 2 pages, and they're going to include the goals and activities, and we'll go into more detail there. They're typically sort of in the 3 to 5 year range, and they'll be updated just like you would for a strategic plan for BPC within your department. And these are going to be submitted for feedback and for verification from BPCnet.org. So on BPCnet.org, you're going to find some resources for writing a BPC plan, and you can see it's separated between writing a project BPC plan, that's to submit to the NSF, and writing a departmental BPC plan. I'll start you off by walking you through some resources on BPCnet that are specific to making a project BPC plan. Okay, you can maybe barely see it, but I've selected project plan at the top of BPCnet, and you can see that that takes me to a page that has templates for making my NSF plan, or my NSF BPC plan, a text of the BPC solicitation from the NSF, and then a community created rubric. So on the left-hand side, that's the text from the template, which is matched in the rubric, and then on the right-hand side, that's the NSF solicitation. And in creating that project template and that rubric, we were really careful to make sure that it was well aligned with the NSF solicitation, so that we're giving you really good advice so that you can write a BPC plan that can be really impactful. Okay, a note about the template is that it's not required. And then something that's a little bit confusing is if you have multiple PIs, obviously you're only going to do one research project, and that's got to be coherent. But actually your BPC activities for each PI could be disjoint. So maybe one PI is passionate about one thing and another PI is going to do a completely different thing, etc. That's totally fine. And so the template is actually designed to be used for each activity. Strategy is the kind of confusing word that the NSF uses to refer to activities. So you might include this template, giving the context that motivates your activity, saying who the intended population is for your activity, what's the specifics of the activity and the content and the budget and the responsibilities of the PI, the preparation that the PIs have for that activity, and then how are you going to evaluate that activity. And so if I have 3 PIs who are each doing completely different BPC activities, I would repeat that context, population, strategy, preparation, evaluation template twice. 3 times if I have 3 PI. Okay, a really easy path to an impactful BPC activity is to download data for your context. That is going to motivate your activity. Then copy and paste an example activity. Novelty is really not necessary. We just want people to be doing meaningful and impactful BPC activities. And so the extent to which you can adopt a best practice and use that as your plan, that is great. And I'll draw your attention to this piece about the provided preparation. So first you can go to BPCnet.org and you can go to /statistics, and it has the opportunity for you to download data from your context. So you can see here that I've selected in Utah State. I want University of Utah, bachelor's degrees from 2013 to 2016. This is data from IPEDS, which is managed by the national government. And you can see similarly there's a tab for K-12 enrollment. So if my BPC activity relates to K-12 students, I could similarly click on that data to get data that motivates my intended population and my activity. So we've got a set of example BPC activities, and you can copy and paste these into your plan that you submit to the NSF. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that each of them includes a preparation of PIs section, and that enumerates the things you need to have done really before you submit your plan. So while you're just copying and pasting a plan that someone else wrote, there's still some steps you need to take so that you're really prepared to execute that plan. Okay, so again, the links: download the data from your context, copy and paste an example plan that provides all those, uses the template and provides all those pieces, and then you need to, as a PI, need to complete the provided preparation. Okay, we're going to jump over and start talking about resources for departmental BPC plans. So again, these are to get your department really organized in having organized activities that collectively contribute to broadening participation. Okay, similarly on BPCnet, we've got this department plan link, and we've got templates for your department BPC plan. We've got a community-created checklist for your department BPC plan, and then we've got some example plans for you to look at. So I want to walk you through the pieces of that checklist. So the first is just a header. Then we've got the context that's similar to the project plan. So that's some currently available data, the goals for your department over the next time frame, and then activities and evaluation. And because activities and evaluation are likely linked, those are just in one section here. Okay, so in that header, you're going to be listing your effective dates of your plan. And I think just a good default is that they are a 5-year plan. But I think if this is your first departmental plan that you're writing, you probably want that first department plan to be revised after 6 months. And I would recommend that you focus on data collection during those first 6 months. So all of your short-term goals in that 5-year plan are focused on data collection. And then your header will also include contact information, who's ultimately responsible for this plan. And once your department is on board with your plan, and with your department head or department chair's approval, then you can submit these to BPCnet.org for verification, and then they can be posted as additional examples. And then similarly, when we talked about the project plans, people can link in their NSF proposal and that BPC plan to one of these departmental plans. And so then it's handy because then those verified plans will be listed on BPCnet. Okay, the second piece on this departmental BPC plan rubric, or checklist, is additionally the context. So again, you're just going to go to bpcnet.org/statistics and you can download data. Okay, I'm jumping over goals for a second and saying, do you know what BPC activities already exist on your campus? And I'm guessing probably the answer is no. There's probably a lot that's going on within your department and even beyond your department that really benefits BPC within your department. So what we've done is we've made this spreadsheet. So you can see it here, existing activities to broaden participation in computing. And if you click on that link, actually it'll take you to make a copy of that document. And this is just a handy document that you can send around to your colleagues to be like, hey, I'm trying to compile a list of all the BPC activities that we've got going on. Please add to this spreadsheet. And here I'm going to be focused on activities, but actually evaluating those activities is really important. And BPCnet.org has a whole section about data and evaluation that has resources for how, you can identify data that's relevant to your context and what motivates your BPC activity, and then also evaluation tools and strategies for evaluation as you're thinking about refining your BPC activities over time and figuring out which are the most impactful. Okay, another resource that I think is helpful in creating your departmental plan is this list of BPC activities. So you can see it's at tinyurl.com/ncwit activities. And really, I just think this is a helpful tool for brainstorming and remembering all the BPC activities that you might be doing on your campus. So none of them have a lot of description, but it's just a list you can look at to jog your memory. Okay, now I want to address a pitfall. So faculty often assume that BPC always involves outreach to K-12 students and sending students to a diversity-focused conference. And these are totally fine BPC activities, but I think the big question is, do these take advantage of a faculty member's skills and spheres of influence? So if a faculty member has no knowledge of K-12 pedagogy or curriculum, it wouldn't make sense to send them into a K-12 classroom and assume that they would be prepared to provide inclusive computer science instruction that could contribute to broadening participation in computing. And so really thinking about what are the faculty members' skills is important. The spheres of influence. So there might be things outside your institution where as a faculty member you don't naturally have influence or you're not in a position of power like in K-12 schools. And so thinking about where you are in a position of power or do have a sphere or are within your sphere of influence can be helpful. So let me talk you through a few of those. So improving your pedagogy. So pedagogy is the ways in which you teach. BPCnet.org has resources for identifying pedagogical techniques that have a differential benefit for students who are underrepresented in computing. So you might change your pedagogy to be more effective, and this research suggests is likely to benefit all students and additionally benefit students who are underrepresented in computing. So this is one of the rare times where a BPC activity might serve all students. But because there's research suggesting it additionally benefits students who are underrepresented in computing, it's a BPC activity. Similarly, you could revise your curriculum or your departmental curriculum. It's really helpful if we can identify some tacit assumptions of our curriculum. For example, when I was a graduate student at Berkeley, I did a study where we found that in the data structures class, women were performing worse than men in that data structures class, but we weren't seeing a difference between men and women's performance in the first course. But when we dug a little bit deeper, because we thought, hey, someone's gender identity shouldn't predict their performance in a CS2 course, we found that students who knew Java before coming to college had an advantage in that second semester computer science course. And so actually, that was the first time where Java was used in the undergraduate program in CS at Berkeley. And if you controlled for whether or not someone had seen Java before they came to college, there was no gender difference in performance in that CS2 class. And so when we can identify some of these underlying assumptions of our curriculum, then we can address those underlying assumptions that then actually can lead to broadening participation in computing, because here there was a differential negative impact for students who hadn't seen Java before. And Java is used in the AP Computer Science A exam, and access to AP Computer Science at the high school level is unequally distributed by race. And additionally, women are less likely to take that course. But we can revise our curriculum to make sure that if CS2 requires that students know Java, then we make sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn Java before taking that course. This ties right into thinking about improving departmental policies. So in many institutions, for a student to be successful getting into the CS major or even being a successful computer science major, it requires that they had pre-college computer science learning. But remember, access to computer science instruction at the high school level is unequally distributed by race. So Black, Latinx, and Native students are less likely to have access to computer science in high school. And then women of all races are less likely to take computer science courses at their high school. And so the extent to which we as higher education are requiring that students have access and have learned computer science before coming to college to even be successful, we are amplifying an existing racial inequity. And I think it's really important for us to think about the extent to which it is a reasonable expectation of higher education that we not amplify existing racial inequity. Another great BPC activity is to learn about BPC. So BPC education is a great goal for a department and is also a legitimate BPC activity for one of those NSF plans. Expanding research opportunities to broaden participation in computing, and particularly broaden participation in the research pipeline and the faculty pipeline, is a great opportunity. There are resources on BPCnet.org for how you can get involved there. And then really this data analysis piece. So in your context, monitoring BPC data. In the example I gave about the CS2 class where there was a gender difference in performance, if we hadn't been looking for performance patterns disaggregated by gender, we never could have identified the underlying cause of that problem in the curriculum. So we disaggregate data in our analysis to look for retention differences or grade differences, not because we assume that those identities, someone's race or gender, is causing that difference, but by disaggregating that data, we have a better chance of being able to identify the real cause. And in the example above, the real cause was whether or not students had Java knowledge, which just was correlated with the student's gender. And I think it's really important to think about these first four. The extent to which you have a faculty engage in these activities are likely sustaining. So if I change my pedagogy, in ways that benefit students who are underrepresented in computing, I'm likely going to continue those practices. BPCnet.org has tons of resources for selecting activities. So here you can see the resources tab right at the top in this menu has got selecting BPC activities. And it organizes things into student retention and then outreach and recruiting. And again, I want to focus you on retention. So thinking about before we reach out and try and bring more students into our context, let's make sure that we don't have retention problems, or for the retention problems we have, let's see if we can address those. And that can really be much more impactful BPC activities to improve your department's curriculum and pedagogy and community and policies, and really, as a community, engage in learning about broadening participation in computing. Okay, so on that last slide, I just had just a few words about what each one of those are, but if you go to resources and then selecting BPC activities, you can just see essentially like a sentence or two description about what each of those are. Okay, and here's an example of what you'd find for one of those. So expanding research opportunities, at the bottom right on that menu, you can see here it's got a little paragraph, a reference, explaining why this is helpful for BPC, and then some specific resources that can help you get started on this BPC activity or on activities related to expanding research opportunities. And each of the categories has similar resources, similar curated set of resources available to you. Okay, you maybe don't remember that we're walking through the steps. So we're walking through the pieces of that departmental plan. Do you remember this slide? So we did header and context, then we jumped to activities and evaluation, and now we're going to go back to goals. Okay, so I put goals at the end because I think you should work on your goals last. Figuring out what are all the activities that you're doing should be your top priority. And then I think you can use those to think about what are realistic goals. And I would recommend in your first departmental plan that you focus on data collection in that first 6 months. BPCnet.org has a bunch of example BPC goals for you to look at, and they're all divided by those different, the student retention and the outreach and recruiting into that same structure. And I think similar to the activity list that I referenced, this can be helpful for jogging your memory about what might you want to achieve. Okay, so as an overview, you've got the header where you're going to try and revise it after 6 months, focus on data collection. Context, you can download data from bpcnet.org/statistics. We've got a bunch of example goals for you to look at to see what the types of goals you might include. And then for activities and evaluation, we've got resources on bpcnet.org for selecting BPC activities, then curated sets of resources depending upon what goals, what of those types of things you want to do. And then for collecting the current activities in your department, we've got that tiny URL to that spreadsheet, and then that NCWIT resource that just lists a bunch of BPC activities that you might already be doing, I think is helpful for jogging your memory. And I'll end it here. BPCnet.org has tons of helpful stuff for you. We're updating it all the time to try and make it more helpful for you and make it easier for individual faculty members, individual members of the computing community to do impactful BPC work. It's really going to take this collective effort for us to achieve our BPC goals. And again, thank you to Breakthrough Tech for the invitation to come and speak with you.